Have you ever wondered why some people seem to carry an unshakable peace within them, while others live in constant turmoil despite having everything they could desire? Why does one person face loss with dignity, while another crumbles at the slightest disappointment? What separates those who inspire respect through their mere presence from those who demand attention yet receive none? Perhaps you have noticed that the wisest among us are often the quietest, that those who speak least about their virtue display it most clearly, and that those who seek power over others have lost power over themselves. There is something profound at work here, something that reaches beyond mere fortune or circumstance. It touches the very core of what it means to be human. 25 centuries ago, in the ancient kingdom of Lu, there lived a man who understood these mysteries better than perhaps anyone before or since. His name was Confucius, though history knows him as Confucius, the master whose teachings would shape the moral landscape of nations and the inner lives of countless souls. He was not a king, not a general, not a wealthy merchant. He was simply a teacher who saw that the greatest battles are fought not on battlefields, but within the human heart. Confucius taught that life, in all its complexity and seeming chaos, follows certain unchanging principles. Just as rivers flow toward the sea and seasons follow their eternal cycle, human existence unfolds according to moral laws that govern everything from the relationship between parent and child to the way a ruler should govern his people. But here is what makes his wisdom so remarkable. He understood that these same principles that create harmony in families and kingdoms also create peace within the individual soul. You live in a world where people chase after countless things, believing that happiness lies in acquisition, in achievement, in being seen and praised by others. Yet the more they pursue these external rewards, the more restless they become. They accumulate wealth but not contentment. They gain followers but not friends. They achieve recognition but not self-respect. And in their quiet moments, when the noise of the world subsides, they face a troubling question. Why does none of this bring the peace they seek? The answer, according to the master, lies not in what you gather from the world, but in what you cultivate within yourself. He taught that every person possesses the capacity for virtue, just as every seed contains the potential for a mighty tree. But like that seed, virtue must be nurtured, protected, and allowed to grow through patient cultivation. This is not a process that happens overnight, nor is it something that can be forced through willpower alone. It requires understanding, practice, and above all, the courage to look honestly at yourself. Think of a farmer who tends his fields. He does not plant his crops and expect them to flourish without care. He prepares the soil, removes the weeds, provides water when needed, and protects the young plants from harsh winds. The harvest comes not from wishing, but from consistent, mindful action, guided by knowledge of what promotes growth and what hinders it. In the same way, the cultivation of character requires this same patient attention to the conditions that nurture virtue and the recognition of what destroys it. But what exactly is virtue in the Confucian understanding? It is not mere rule-following or external conformity to social expectations. True virtue emerges from the alignment of your inner nature with the way of heaven, that eternal principle of righteousness and harmony that governs all things. When your thoughts, words, and actions flow from this source, you become like a clear spring that refreshes all who drink from it. Your presence brings peace to troubled hearts. Your words carry weight without force, and your example inspires others without preaching. The master identified 5 fundamental virtues that form the foundation of noble character. First is benevolence, the warm-hearted care for others that sees their well-being as inseparable from your own. This is not mere sentiment, but a practical recognition that human beings are interconnected like branches of the same tree. When one suffers, all are affected. When one flourishes, all benefit. Second comes righteousness, the unwavering commitment to doing what is morally correct, regardless of personal cost or convenience. This virtue asks not what is profitable or pleasant, but what is right. It is the inner compass that guides you through difficult decisions when the path forward is unclear, but the moral choice is unmistakable. Third is propriety, the understanding of what is appropriate in each relationship and circumstance. This is not empty ceremony, but the wisdom that recognizes how your conduct affects the harmony of the whole. Just as a musician must know when to play loudly and when to remain silent for the sake of the entire symphony, you must understand your proper role in the grand composition of human society. Fourth is wisdom, not mere cleverness or accumulated information, but the deep understanding that comes from reflection, experience, and moral insight. True wisdom sees beyond appearances to the underlying principles that govern human affairs. It knows when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to wait, when to be firm and when to be flexible. Finally comes trustworthiness, the quality that makes all other virtues possible. Without reliability in word and deed, benevolence becomes mere sentiment. Righteousness becomes self-righteousness. Propriety becomes performance, and wisdom becomes manipulation. But when your character is anchored in truthfulness, others can depend on you as they depend on the rising of the sun. These virtues do not exist in isolation like separate jewels in a collection. They interpenetrate and support each other like the elements of a healthy body. When one is strengthened, all are strengthened. When one is neglected, all suffer. The person who cultivates them discovers something remarkable. The same qualities that make for harmonious relationships with others also create inner peace and strength. Yet here we encounter a profound paradox that lies at the heart of Confucian teaching. The very act of trying to force these virtues through sheer effort often defeats the purpose. Like trying to catch your own shadow, the harder you grasp, the more elusive they become. True virtue arises not from struggle, but from understanding, not from self-conquest, but from self-knowledge, not from rigid discipline, but from patient cultivation of the conditions that allow your natural goodness to flourish, to flourish. This is why the Master taught that the cultivation of virtue begins not with grand gestures or heroic acts, but with the smallest details of daily life. How you speak to your servants reveals more about your character than how you address princes. The way you treat your parents when they are old and frail shows your true nature more clearly than any public display of filial devotion. The patience you show when no one is watching becomes the foundation for the wisdom others will seek when storms arise. Consider the ancient story of the student who came to Confucius, complaining that his progress in virtue was too slow, that despite years of study and practice, he still found himself irritated by small inconveniences, still caught in moments of selfishness, still falling short of the noble ideals he had embraced. The Master listened quietly, then led the young man to a window overlooking the courtyard where bamboo grew. "Watch how the bamboo bends in the wind," the Master said. "It does not resist the storm with rigid strength, yet it does not break. It yields without surrendering its essential nature. Each season it grows, not by forcing itself upward, but by remaining rooted in good soil, drawing nourishment from the earth, and following the natural rhythm of growth and rest. This is how virtue develops within you, not through violent effort that exhausts the spirit, but through consistent attention to the conditions that nurture goodness." The student protested that he had been trying so hard, practicing rituals, studying texts, examining his conscience each evening. Why then did he still feel so far from the peace and wisdom he sought? The master smiled with the gentle sadness of one who understands human nature deeply. Your very trying is what blocks the way, he replied. When a river meets a boulder, it does not attack the stone. It flows around it, patiently wearing away the obstacles through gentle persistence. Your character is like that water. It cannot be forced into new channels through struggle alone. This teaching strikes at the heart of a misunderstanding that traps many who seek to improve themselves. They approach virtue as if it were an enemy to be conquered, a mountain to be scaled through sheer determination. They set rigid rules for themselves, demand perfection, and become discouraged when they inevitably fall short. But virtue is not your enemy. It is your truest nature seeking expression through the accumulated habits and choices of your daily life. Think of how a master craftsman works with wood. He does not fight against the grain, but learns to read it, to understand the natural tendencies of the material, and to shape his work in harmony with these inherent qualities. The most beautiful furniture emerges not from forcing the wood into unnatural forms, but from revealing the beauty that already lies hidden within it. In the same way, moral cultivation requires learning to work with your nature rather than against it. Yet this does not mean accepting every impulse or desire as natural and therefore good. The master was clear that human beings possess both noble and base tendencies, both the capacity for great virtue and the inclination toward selfishness and disorder. The work of cultivation lies in strengthening what is worthy while gradually transforming what is harmful. This happens not through violent suppression, but through patient redirection, like training a vine to grow toward the light rather than into shadows. The process begins with honest observation of yourself, without the harsh judgment that so often accompanies self-examination. When anger arises, rather than condemning yourself as a failure, you learn to notice how anger feels in your body, what thoughts feed it, what circumstances trigger it most strongly. This awareness creates a small space between the feeling and your response, and in that space lies the possibility of choice. The same patient attention applies to every aspect of character. When you notice yourself speaking harshly to a younger person, instead of defending the action or drowning in guilt, you can observe what fear or insecurity drove those words. When you find yourself boasting about your accomplishments, you can examine what hunger for recognition lies beneath the need to impress others. When you discover yourself avoiding a difficult conversation, you can explore what attachment to comfort prevents you from speaking necessary truths. This kind of self-observation requires great courage, because it means seeing yourself clearly without the flattering distortions that protect the ego from uncomfortable truths. Yet it also brings great freedom, because you begin to understand the patterns that have been controlling your life from the shadows. Like a physician who must accurately diagnose an illness before prescribing treatment, you must see your character clearly before you can cultivate what is best within it. The master taught that this process of cultivation naturally leads to what he called rectification of the heart. When your inner world becomes ordered through virtue, your outer actions align themselves naturally with righteousness. You no longer need to constantly monitor your behavior or force yourself to act morally, because your actions spring from a transformed source. The kindness you show others emerges not from duty, but from genuine care. The honesty you practice comes not from fear of consequences, but from love of truth. This transformation affects not only you, but everyone in your sphere of influence. A person whose heart has been rectified through virtue becomes like a well-tuned instrument that naturally produces harmony. Their presence calms troubled spirits, their words carry healing power, and their example inspires others to seek the same inner peace. Without preaching or demanding, they become teachers simply by living according to their highest nature. Yet the path of cultivation is not without its trials and setbacks. There will be days when old patterns reassert themselves with surprising strength, when circumstances test your newly developed virtues beyond what seems bearable, when the gap between your ideals and your reality feels impossibly wide. These moments are not signs of failure, but necessary stages in the process of growth, like the pruning that helps a tree grow stronger and more fruitful. The master understood that these difficult moments serve a purpose that the struggling heart cannot immediately see. Just as a blacksmith must heat metal in the forge before it can be shaped into something useful, the trials that test your virtue are the very forces that strengthen and refine it. The student who has never faced genuine temptation cannot know the true depth of his righteousness. The person who has never experienced loss cannot understand the full meaning of compassion. The one who has never been tested by power cannot appreciate the value of humility. When such trials come, and they surely will, the cultivated person does not curse their fate or wonder why heaven has abandoned them. Instead, they recognize these challenges as opportunities to deepen their understanding and strengthen their resolve. A tree that grows in constant shelter remains weak and brittle, but one that endures storms develops roots that reach deep into the earth and branches that bend without breaking. Your character develops in the same way, growing stronger through the very difficulties that seem designed to destroy it. Yet there is a crucial distinction between accepting trials with wisdom and seeking them out through pride or impatience. Some who hear these teachings mistakenly believe they should court difficulty or create unnecessary hardships for themselves, thinking this will accelerate their moral development. This is like a farmer who burns his own crops, believing that fire will make them grow faster. True wisdom lies in meeting whatever circumstances arise with equanimity, while working diligently to fulfill your proper duties in each situation. The Master taught that the highest form of courage is not the warrior's bravery in battle, but the quiet strength that allows you to remain true to your principles when everyone around you has abandoned theirs. This kind of moral courage asks you to stand alone when necessary, to speak truth when silence would be easier, to choose right action when wrong action offers immediate rewards. It is the courage of the minister who refuses to flatter a corrupt ruler even at the cost of his position, the merchant who maintains honest weights when competitors prosper through deception, the student who admits ignorance rather than pretending to knowledge he does not possess. Such courage cannot be manufactured through force of will alone. It grows naturally from the soil of cultivated virtue, like fruit that appears on a tree only after the roots have grown deep and the branches have grown strong. When your heart is anchored in righteousness, when your mind is clear about what truly matters, when your spirit is nourished by connection to the eternal principles that govern all things, then courage becomes not a desperate effort, but a natural expression of who you have become. Consider the story of the ancient duke who faced invasion by a powerful enemy army. His advisors urged him to flee or surrender, arguing that resistance would only bring destruction to his people. But the duke had spent years cultivating his character according to the teachings of the sages. He understood that a ruler's first duty is to protect not just the physical safety of his subjects, but their moral dignity and the principles upon which their society rests. He chose to remain and defend his territory, not out of pride or stubbornness, but because he recognized that some things are more valuable than life itself. When captured, he faced his enemies with such composure and dignity that they found themselves unable to execute him. His moral strength had transformed what should have been a moment of defeat into a demonstration of the power that virtue holds even over physical force. Years later, his former enemies would speak of him with respect, and his own people would remember his example as a source of inspiration for generations. This story illustrates something profound about the nature of true strength. The world often teaches that power comes from the ability to control others, to impose your will through force or manipulation. But the master understood that real power flows in the opposite direction. It comes from your ability to govern yourself so completely that external circumstances lose their power to disturb your peace or deflect you from your chosen path. When you no longer need others to behave in a certain way for you to remain calm, when you no longer require constant praise to feel worthy, when you no longer depend on external success to validate your efforts, then you have discovered a kind of freedom that no earthly authority can take away. This is what the sages meant when they spoke of the noble person as one who cannot be corrupted by wealth, moved by poverty, or bent by power. Yet this strength does not make you cold or indifferent to the sufferings of others. Indeed, the opposite is true. When you are no longer consumed by your own anxieties and desires, you become more capable of genuine compassion. Like a physician who can treat a patient's wounds precisely because he is not wounded in the same way, the person of virtue can offer real help to others because his own heart has found peace. The wisdom of Confucius reminds us that the peace we seek has always resided within our reach. Through patient cultivation of virtue, honest examination of our hearts, and alignment with the eternal way, we transform not only ourselves but the world around us. The path is simple, yet demanding. Begin today with small acts of benevolence. Speak only truth. Honor your duties faithfully. In doing so, you join the unbroken lineage of noble souls who have found that true strength comes not from conquering others, but from mastering oneself.